everyone, welcome back to my channel. In anticipation of it being the release month of my most anticipated new release of this year, we are going to be reading Emily Henry for a week. I feel like I can talk about Emily Henry and her books for like ages. Happy Emily Henry release day to those of you who celebrate. I would say Emily Henry is definitely one of my favorite authors, if not my favorite author, and I'm so excited for A Great Big Beautiful Life that's coming out on April 22nd. So for this video, I'm pretty much going to be reading Emily Henry until release date. I will unfortunately be recovering from getting my wisdom teeth out on April 19th, so I don't think I'll be able to get a physical copy of Great Big Beautiful Life when it comes out on the 22nd, but I do really want to read it when it comes out, so I'll probably get it on my Kindle. But for this video, we're going to be starting off with my favorite read from 2024, and that is Funny Story. I probably spent like 30 minutes talking about this book to my partner and reading out like quotes from the book just because I loved it that much. Overall, such a good fun time, and I'm so excited for this reread. For the last book that I'm going to be reading for this video, there's a little bit of a backstory actually. Emily Henry is a very well-known popular author for her adult contemporary romance books, which are all of these. But before she released Beach Read, which was her first adult contemporary romance, she was actually writing young adult magical realism. This is where my backstory and #1 fan credentials come in. I was an avid reader in high school and growing up, but I did not know about like the book side of the internet. So BookTube, Goodreads, things like that, I had no idea that they existed, and I really just read books based off of what I saw at the library when I browsed and what caught my eye. And on some random day in like grade 11 or grade 10, I had thought to myself, if someone asked me for a book recommendation, I wouldn't have like any list to give them because it all kind of lives in my head. And spent a bunch of time just writing down as many books that I could remember enjoying growing up and as a teenager in a note on my notes app. And back then I didn't know about like rating systems or things like that. I was really just writing down any books that I could remember enjoying reading. So if I remembered the book and if I enjoyed reading it, it was going on the list. And some of the books on this list don't even have like author names. I could only remember the title, and some of the entries are even just any books by an author, like any books by Sarah Dessen. When I started using Goodreads in 2021 or 2022, I decided to go back to the list and look up some of the books to see what Goodreads had rated them or what the average rating was on Goodreads. And one of the books that was on this list was The Love That Split the World, and to my surprise, this book is written by none other than Emily Henry. This was such a cool surprise to me because I love Emily Henry's adult romances, and then when I had read that book when I was a teenager, I had loved enough to put it on this list of book recommendations I would have. And when I started reading Emily Henry as an adult, I didn't even know that I had read one of her books in the past. And for this video, I'm going to be reading the other YA book that she had released, which is A Million Junes. I am planning on picking it up from the library. I don't know much about what this book is about, but I know there's elements of magical realism and I think like paranormal activity in this book perhaps. But either way, I'm excited to read it, and I'm excited to see how her YA writing kind of compares to her newer books. That's it for this very long intro. I'm so excited to be reading Emily Henry for a week. Time to start my Funny Story reread. Story is about a girl named Daphne. She is a librarian currently living in Michigan because she had moved there because of her fiance Peter, and this book starts off with a bang. You find out immediately about Peter and Daphne's relationship, and then you immediately find out that Peter has cheated on her with his best friend on his bachelor trip. And when he comes back from his bachelor to tell Daphne that he's actually in love with Petra, his best friend, and that they're gonna be together and they're calling off the engagement, he is so graceful and he gives her a couple of days to move out of their house. In a turn of events, she moves in with her ex-fiance's current girlfriend's ex-boyfriend. She moves in with Miles. Her goal is to get through this like library fundraiser readathon that she's doing and planning at her workplace before she moves out of Michigan. I say this every time I talk about Emily Henry, but Happy Place and Funny Story are my favorite books by Emily Henry. After reading Happy Place in 2023, like something just struck a chord in me within that book, and I didn't think it could be topped, but Funny Story came out last year, my favorite book of 2024, and I would definitely say it is a close contender. What I really enjoyed about this book and what I'm enjoying now is definitely the writing. I love Emily Henry's writing. Even like the opening paragraphs page of this book is already enticing, and I feel like I already resonated with the first page of this book. book, so I knew that I was going to like Daphne as a character. I also really liked Miles as a character. I had watched a few reviews before reading Funny Story, and a lot of people did not like Miles as a character at all. I saw a lot of people say like, this is the main character's love interest that I'm supposed to like swoon over and I'm supposed to be obsessed with, and a lot of people didn't like this book because they didn't like the guy main character, and that's totally fair for a romance book. But at the same time, what I liked about Happy Place was that Win, the main guy character, wasn't like this super charming, super attractive, like amazing partner. I feel like he was made to be very real. The books with grand gestures are amazing and they're sweet and they're swoon worthy, but they're not always super realistic, and I like that characters feel like they're also real people. So to no one's surprise, I'm really enjoying my reread. So yeah, let's keep reading. Also, I forgot to mention that I don't think I'll be able to read A Million Junes before Great Big Beautiful Life comes out, so I'll probably read A Million Junes after I read A Great Big Beautiful Life. So this video isn't really reading Emily Henry until the release date. It's kind of just like reading Emily Henry, period. So just to preface that the books will now be out of order.
Baby, when I look in your eyes, I can see you as a child.
Update. I don't know if it's obvious. I feel like it is, but I got my wisdom teeth taken out. I feel like I'm going to look back at these clips while I'm editing and be like, wow, my face is just so swollen. My face is super swollen right now. I just want to get that out of the way. If this is your first time seeing any of my videos, my face normally does not swell up randomly like this. It's just because I got my wisdom teeth taken out. Here to give a funny story update. One, because I'm like more than halfway through this book already, and two, because it's Emily Henry release day. Happy Emily Henry release day to those of you who celebrate. I cannot get over how swollen I am, so I'm gonna keep this update short, and hopefully in the next few clips my face will be less swollen. I am 215 pages into my Funny Story reread, and I am enjoying it so much. What I distinctly remember loving about Funny Story when I had read it the first time was mostly how much I related to both Daphne and Miles as characters. They each have very interesting family dynamics, and then Daphne as a character, I kind of just related to her as well. She talks a lot about how she doesn't feel like she fits in that well. Her reason being that she moved around a lot as a kid. She never really established those long-lasting relationships and friendships that kids and like teenagers would normally have because she moved around so often. She also just talks about how difficult she finds making friends now, and like she's well into her 30s and yet she still has difficulty making friends. She also talks a lot about like meeting new people and how she's always afraid of saying the wrong thing, like never really knowing when to say certain things or not say certain things. Her brain's always kind of second guessing itself, and like even though she overcame it in this book pretty quickly, I would say, something that she's been dealing with like all her life, I feel like it's never that easy. But I definitely think that it was a nice touch to her character, and it added a lot to the story as well. So that's kind of what I loved most about this book the first time I read it, just how much Emily Henry put my thoughts into words on paper. Regarding the romantic aspect of Funny Story, I'm absolutely devouring it. I think I went into this book originally knowing that I wasn't going to like fall in love with the male main character, because that's kind of how I felt about Win, because the first impression you get of Miles is not great, but Miles definitely grows on you as a character, and also just like as a friend to Daphne, not even as a romantic interest for her, but he is such a great friend, and you see that in like his interactions with Daphne and his interactions with people in this town. But I will say the fake dating trope in here is so good. The way Emily Henry does it, something about it just makes me want to pick up more books with fake dating in it. I read this book before I had this channel, so I never really got to talk about this book in this way, but I could talk about Funny Story for ages, and I feel like when it's promoted, it's just like, oh, this forced proximity, roommate situation, fake dating, etc. But there's just so much more to this book than the romantic aspects of it. Anyway, for now, I am back to work and icing my face so that it stops swelling. of updates. One, I have stopped swelling from my wisdom teeth. I was watching the clip of the funny story update and I was just so swollen. Filming this video around the time I got my wisdom teeth out was probably not the best idea. But anyway, onto the reading updates. I did finish my reread of Funny Story. I think I finished this about like 2 or 3 days ago. I feel like I already said what I wanted to say in that reading update that I did, but I was also very swollen and I don't know if I really made any sense. I really enjoyed my reread of Funny Story. What's interesting to me is that last year when I first read this book, I think my favorite part was learning more about Daphne's character and how her upbringing kind of shaped her personality now. Similar with Miles, how his unique upbringing kind of shaped the way he perceives the world and how he perceives himself. And what I found most enjoyable reading this last year was kind of Daphne's self-growth. I love the way that Emily Henry described Daphne's growth in this book and how she was like finding herself and finding her own routines and not centering herself around her partner like she was doing with Peter. The reread has definitely given me a newfound appreciation for the romance plot in this book and how Daphne and Miles' friendship kind of blossomed before they became a couple. So overall, such a good reread. I'm so glad that I got to reread Funny Story because it was truly my favorite book of 2024. There's just something about Emily Henry's writing that really clicks with me. I think Happy Place is still my favorite Emily Henry book, and then Funny Story is definitely my second favorite. I did start Great Beautiful Life, and first impressions, I am 30% in, but first impressions, I'm enjoying it so much. Since the release, I've seen a lot of negative discourse about Great Beautiful Life, and I do want to speak on this discourse a little bit. But first off, what this book is about. Alice, the main character, is an aspiring writer. She's currently working for like a media company, and Alice really wants to get published one day, and in her pursuit to get published, she really wants to write the biography of this woman named Margaret, who was very famous like years and years ago, and she's kind of gone dark since then and off the grid. Margaret has also agreed to let someone else approach her regarding the story, which is Hayden, our main male character, and he's a more established author. He's already been published, he's won the Pulitzer Prize Award, and Alice thinks that she like no longer stands a chance. However, Alice is a very optimistic person. You get that straight off the bat, and I find that aspect of her character so endearing. And it's really funny because Hayden isn't really like grumpy. Like I wouldn't call this like a grumpy ex sunshine trope. I kind of hate that trope labeling, but he is more reserved, calm, and she's just very optimistic and extroverted. So anyway, Margaret kind of offers the idea to let them interview her for a month, and at the end of the month she's going to decide who gets to write her biography. So far the story kind of follows 2 formats. It follows like a regular plotline format in Alice's perspective, and the other chapter is labeled the story, which is essentially Margaret telling her life story, which I assume is going to be wrapped up into the biography at the end. Like I don't know if the chapters that we're reading is actually like, going to be excerpts from the biography, like if that's how Emily Henry set it up. But so far I'm enjoying it a lot. There's been a lot of discourse recently on TikTok that I've seen in regards to Great Beautiful Life, and people who have read it before, like when they had an arc, and people reading it now. One side of like the argument, I guess, is that they dislike Great Beautiful Life because it doesn't feel like a romance, that it feels more like a contemporary fiction or a woman's fiction with a subplot of romance. And that's kind of what I've been saying about Happy Place and Funny Story, that I feel like the romance plot isn't necessarily a subplot. It is a very large portion of the book. It is marketed as a romance book. When I think of a contemporary romance, I feel like the entire book, the entire plot revolves around that romantic relationship developing. You can get a very well-rounded character, and yet most of everything in the plot line follows the romantic relationship developing. So I personally agree with those statements. I don't agree with people giving it a negative rating because they don't feel like it is romantic enough. I don't really know what they mean in that regard because I'm 30% in, and like you can kind of already feel like the romance is budding. And I don't see labeling it as a women's fiction or a contemporary fiction as a bad thing, but I have seen a lot of like counter arguments, people saying that Emily Henry is a romance author. She labels herself as a romance author. She doesn't label herself as a fiction author. So why are people saying that her books aren't considered romance just because there's less smut or well-rounded characters or depth? I guess the negativity towards that comment kind of comes from the fact that people are giving it like negative ratings because it doesn't feel like a romance book, because it doesn't follow the typical contemporary romance like formula. But yeah, everyone has a different opinion, and I've just been very curious about that just because I've been seeing so many videos about this discourse online. I just got to the part where a part of Margaret's mystery is revealed, kind of a small part of the plot, but I think a bigger part of the mystery is going to be revealed pretty soon. But I only have 10% left. I feel like that's not that much, but I feel like so much more could happen, so I don't know how the ending's gonna pan out. But since the mystery isn't revealed yet, I feel like it's going to be kind of a crazy ending, so let's see. I have a prediction about part of the mystery reveal, and I'm gonna see if that's true or not. I knew it! That was my prediction. My prediction was correct. finished, and I'm gonna need some time to process this book. Since I finished Creepy Beautiful Life, and I've had the time to process and everything. So I finally have a rating, and I finally have like my thoughts and everything settled for this book. So this is what my final thoughts are on Creepy Beautiful Life. And then I also have reading updates for A Million Junes, because I am like a quarter of the way through this book. I really enjoyed the book overall. I have settled on a 4.25 star rating for this book. Since people started getting the arc, I've been seeing so many negative reviews when people say that there wasn't enough romance or it wasn't romantic enough. I question if we were reading the same book. This book was full of very soft, tender moments between Alice and Hayden, and I feel like that's the embodiment of what falling in love feels like. I think the way that their story was written out felt very real, I guess, in terms of like their circumstances and their life and how they've come to develop feelings for each other. In saying that, I did feel like this was a bit insta-lovey for me. They've only known each other for a month and they already had these very strong feelings for each other. But I was also thinking about it, and considering their age, they're like early 30s if I'm not mistaken, and their life experiences that they've had, relationships they've had in the past, their current circumstances where they're basically spending every single day with each other for like a month, I can see how a relationship could develop under those circumstances, but I just wasn't fully convinced. The reason why I thought this book was going to be like the most women's fiction-y was because of all the discourse I saw on it, people saying that it wasn't romance heavy at all. I do think that Margaret's story and that plot line and the mystery behind it did overshadow the romance subplot a little bit. I wouldn't say it's like a complete overhaul of the romance plotline. I feel like if anything, it was a 60-40 split between Margaret's life story and then the romance plotline. I do feel like if this book was a bit longer, we would have been able to have a better fleshed out version of Margaret's life as well as Alice's life and Alice and Hayden's relationship. One thing I love about Emily Henry's books is that she always incorporates like some kind of very strong family dynamics in her books, and she shows how it affects her main characters and how eventually their character grows to kind of fix those flaws about them that their family dynamics cause. Specifically in this one with how Alice's personality is very bubbly and optimistic, and that's kind of her way of going about life. She's always saying like everything's fine, like everything's okay, but obviously that's kind of a coping mechanism for her. This book does touch upon grief quite a bit, so if that's a trigger warning, that's kind of something I would look into before reading the book. Now, the reason why I don't think this is a 5-star for me is because I didn't personally connect with any of the main characters in this book. I think the reason why I love Happy Place and Funny Story so much is because I can connect with the main characters. I see myself in Harriet, and I see myself in Daphne and Miles, and in this book I couldn't really connect with Alice or Hayden. I feel like they were a little bit less well-rounded than the characters in Happy Place and Funny Story. I don't know if that's because I don't connect with them, but yeah, I think had I connected with the characters, I probably would have rated this a bit higher. Overall, still an amazing book. I love Emily Henry's writings, and I will literally read whatever she puts out. So I will definitely be doing a reread of Beach Read, Book Lovers, and People We Meet on Vacation probably sometime this year, just because I want to do a more definitive ranking of all of her adult romance books. But as of right now, it's Happy Place, Funny Story, and then all the rest. Like, I can't really decipher between the last 4. Now let's talk about A Million Junes. This is the second novel that she's ever released. It is is a young adult book with magical realism, so definitely different from her adult contemporary romances. The book is about a girl named June who lives in a very small town called Five Fingers, and she comes from a long line of Jack O'Donnells, and essentially her ancestors have built roots into this town. They have this huge cherry farm. They're like known for their cherries back in the day, and her father, who has since passed, I think he passed away about 10 years ago now, he used to tell her stories about their ancestors like all the time, and she was really engrossed in her family history. Where the magical realism comes in is her dad used to be a big believer in magic. He used to believe that their ancestors built their house on like a very thin place where like the magic world kind of combines with the human world. They believe in ghosts and like spirits, things like that. So June also believes in that because she really believed in what her father believed in, essentially. And one of her dad's rules is to never engage with the angered family because they have a long-standing feud. Not only that, but it is believed if they cross paths or engage in any certain way, like bad things happen. June is going into her senior year of high school, bumps into Saul Engert, and Saul has not been in town for I think like 3 or 4 years, and now he's back and she starts developing feelings for him. She has like a slight minor crush. This book doesn't have the best average rating on Goodreads, but I feel like this is classic Emily Henry plus magical realism, and I am really intrigued to see if she ever goes back to writing magical realism in her like adult contemporary romances, because I am really enjoying not just like the romantic aspect of it, but the magic realism bit. Despite this only being like the second novel that she's published, Emily Henry for sure knows how to do two things very, very well, and this is evident in all her books. First, writing about small towns and small town settings. She is so good at developing the small town and like putting me in the environment. I've never lived in a small town similar to any of the settings in her books. I feel like I can envision it just by the way she writes her settings. And the second thing Emily Henry knows how to do very well is write banter. I love the interactions between June and Saul in this book, and like all her other main characters. I feel like she does so well at writing banter, and it definitely feels like classic Emily Henry, just in a young adult format. So I'm really enjoying this book. I'm finding it so much fun and I'm kind of flying through it. Very excited to keep reading. Not even done this book yet. I think I have about 100 or so pages left, a little under 100 maybe. But if this book keeps going in the way it has been, I'm going to need Emily Henry to write more books with paranormal activity and magic realism in it, because this has been done so well. Something else that's pretty unique to this book in comparison to Emily Henry's like adult contemporary romances is that the stakes are a lot higher in this book, and she knows how to write a high stakes scene. I'm on the edge of my seat trying to figure out what happens next. I just want to flip through the pages and figure out what happens at the end of the story. You don't really get that same kind of high stakes intense feeling in her adult contemporary romances, but in this book you do. If you ever wondered what Emily Henry's writing would be like in a different kind of book, read A Million Junes. Like, I'm not even done yet. I don't know how the ending's gonna turn out. I'm assuming it's gonna be a good ending. Regardless of what happens at the end of the book, everything else was done so well, and I've been really enjoying this read. So let's finish the last 100 pages. I'm giving it a 4.5 star. This book had a pretty heavy depiction of grief and talking about the death of someone very close to you. There was specifically a part in this book where June's thinking to herself and talking about how people just expect her to move on because the passing of her father was so long ago. It was like 10 years ago. She was 8 years old, and she talks about how people expect her to just be sad for that time and then kind of get over it. And she explains how grief isn't linear, how it kind of comes in waves, and how you could be super happy one moment and then all of a sudden it hits you and reality kind of comes crashing in and you're back to the grieving process again. Obviously that's not a new concept. Emily Henry didn't create that thought process of like talking about grief, but as someone who fortunately has never experienced what June has experienced, I feel like the way that it was described was done very well, and in a way that I understand June better and I understand like grieving a little bit better. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but Emily Henry is the queen of writing banter and writing complex family dynamics. I feel like in all of her books the banter is amazing, and then the way she talks about different types of families and growing up in those environments and how it affects you as you're older, specifically in her adult romances, it is definitely done super well and in a way that I can understand it without having been in that family dynamic. In this book, June idolizes her parents, specifically her father, a lot, and as she's trying to break her curse as well as like learn more about it, she's kind of learning more about her father and her parents' relationship and how it wasn't as like picture perfect as she was told growing up. She's really grappling with the fact that the things that she's learning and uncovering about her father isn't what she pictured him to be, because she idolized him so much and she kind of cherished all these memories with him and cherished the stories that he would tell, and she realized that some of the stories were kind of fabricated in a way that was more fantastical than it actually was. She goes through various stages of grieving and growing up in this book, which I feel like is very fitting for a YA. The romance was very cute in this book. I would say it's not the sole focus. It's a lot about June learning about her family and then breaking the curse and then her grieving. However, it is the driving force behind why June wants to break the curse, or even why she kind of uncovers it. I do think you need some semblance of like disbelief and whimsy and less skepticism about this book to enjoy it. Like I mentioned, the magical realism isn't super well thought out or anything. It isn't a fantasy book, so I don't expect it to, but some people who read magical realism don't like how unrealistic it is. But there are people in real life who believe in like ghosts and spirits and thin places and things like that, and that's kind of what this book is. It's either you're a believer or you're not. If you start nitpicking at the magical elements in here, I feel like you probably would not like it that much. That pretty much sums up this video. If you got this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed reading Emily Henry with me for a week, because I definitely did. All of the books that I read in this video were above 4 stars, and I think in doing this I definitely solidify Emily Henry as one of my favorite authors. If you also love Emily Henry, I'd love to know what your favorite Emily Henry book is, or what your Emily Henry personal ranking is. If you want to keep up to date with what I'm reading outside of these videos, my Goodreads and Fable are always linked down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.